Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Music of the Week. I have about 6 albums to go through for this episode of Music of the Week, so I will go through these 6 albums for this episode of Music of the Week. So let's go. We begin with Acid Throne and what I think might be their first album, titled Kingdom's Death. These are a very new act to me. At the very least, this could be their second album for all I know. Point is, they're still quite early in their career. They're a very sort of death metal band with some really good doom trappings here and there, and slight weird story stuff. Giving this a B+, I thought it was actually quite good. I like the layering of the instrumentation quite a bit. I think the structuring was actually quite good too. I do think maybe a few of the songs are a little bit on the long side, but they do have really good points to them. I did like the production of it as well. I thought it was a very closed-in mix, and I really think that helps the sound in some ways. It doesn't really give its way to a lot of melody, which I think is why I'm talking a few points, but what it does achieve on purpose, it gets right. And the performances are really good too, especially the guitar work and the drumming. And I think there's piano in this one. I could be incorrect about that. I did quite like the lyrics, even though they are focused mostly on typical death metal-y trappings of war and darkness and so on. They do at least try and serialize and sort of loosely conceptualize things into kind of a little story here and there. Not much in terms of concept. In fact, we do have a concept album of sorts to cover, but that's a bit later on. But still, really good in terms of songwriting, and just a pretty solid album for a for a band very early into their career. So yeah, good shit if you're interested in some early stuff like that. Next, we have a band who's been around for a bit longer, Angra, and their new album Cycles of Pain. And this is a band I've not really heard a lot about before. I think I've got like a few of their stuff for my retroactive, going back over like previous years for doing top 10s and stuff for those years. But this album gets an A+. This is just a really good slice of power metal with some really good heavy metal influences and some solid Brazilian sort of Latin music as well, which pops up quite a bit. There's some solid prog here and there too, and I love the timing changes. They actually feel earned, and they throw in so many unique twists into the structuring, which I think really flesh out the pacing a lot. Performances are really good too. The guitarists, especially, are both fantastic. The vocalist does a really good job. Everyone's just fucking really good on this one. For my first Angra album for a band that's been around for a while, I was actually quite impressed by how well everyone does and how great everyone sounds, you know? The lyrics don't focus on typical power metal sort of things either. I like that there's more of a focus on loss and pain and trying to overcome those things, told in a very realistic way that doesn't just feel like a bunch of empty assurances. And I also quite like the production as well. Very good sheen on this. Just fucking awesome work. I quite enjoyed this. It could be a late runner maybe for my top 30. I don't know. But I do recommend you go listen to this one. The only A+ grade of the episode, by the way. So, yeah, that should tell you all you need to know. But then again, that's just my opinion. Next, we have Burner and their latest album. I think it might be their second one, titled It All Returns to Nothing. This is also more of a death metal-y sort of effort, with a lot of really nicely woven in hardcore punk influences. It did sort of give me a few Dying Wish vibes, not quite at that height though, and I don't like this album as much as that, but I'm only give this album a B. You know, I thought it had some really good stuff to it. I thought, like, from a heavy standpoint, it was quite good. I think a few of the songs did go over a bit quickly, which is a shame because the second to last song is like 7 minutes. Sorry, yeah, 7 minutes. I almost said 7 hours. 7 minutes and 20 seconds and some change long, and it's probably the best song on the album. And it allows them to experiment a bit more, something they don't really do a whole lot. But I do like the overall heavy vibe of it, you know. I like the lyrical themes of like some political stuff, like abuse and abuse of power specifically. And, you know, loneliness and the fact that we do indeed return to nothing. So, positive stuff there. I think the performances are really good too. Props to the drummer especially, and yeah, everyone does at least feel like they believe in what they're doing. Production-wise, really rough, but like in an on-purpose way, and I like it when an album like this actually does that. So, yeah, if you're into this sort of stuff, you know, especially again for a band I'm not overly familiar with, I did quite like enough of this, and I do think they did a really good job. They do need to maybe increase in some areas, but if this is what they want to stick to doing, I just hope that they can continue to do it well like they did here. And again, from a very new band who I think was debuting to another band that's been around for a while, we have Code 7 and their new album Go Let It In. This is their first album in 19 years. Now, from my understanding, this is a band that started more of like a punk act, but gradually became more alternative and experimental, and included elements of space rock, and this is my lowest grade of the episode. It gets a C+, and I think part of the reason is I can't remember a fucking thing about listening to this album. The lyrics try and tell some story of a relationship, I think, but that's not how the band presents it, you know, at least not from what I was able to find in interviews. I think the performances are alright, you know. I mean, they do sometimes sound like they're phoning it in, but it's fine. Instrumentally, good keyboard work. I guess some of the guitar stuff is okay, you know. Production wise, again, to be honest, no clue who did this, but just feels fine. Just feels like, yeah, you know, I'll clean the sound up if I want to do anything to noodle with the formula. And the album is quite formulaic in what it does. Just feels kind of average in a lot of its areas, if I'm being honest. For an album that took this band 19 years to get done, well, they probably didn't start working on it until very, very late. But yeah, it feels a bit weird considering it was 2 decades, almost 2 decades since their last one. But yes, I like some of the stuff on it. I just wish I could remember any of it. So maybe go and listen to it yourself. You might get more out of it than I did, or at least you might remember more than I did. Next, we have Crystal Coffin with what I think is their third album titled The Curse of Immortality. Now, this is, to my knowledge, a very sort of these are a concept-driven band from what I know. They're sort of, again, in the sort of death metal-y range, and I did get this mixed up with Acid Throne earlier. This is a band that actually includes all the nice piano elements. I'm giving this one an A. I quite like this one, mostly for its concept, and there is a trigger warning for the concept, and I will put a timestamp for you to skip past me talking about it, but it does contain some sensitive topics, so if you just want to skip past it and get to me not talking about it anymore, there's the time. So, yeah, just skip to that if you don't want to see this. So the concept is that the album's story and setting is in the future. This is a very loose concept compared to what the band usually do, apparently. And the main protagonist of the album attempts to kill themselves over and over again, but they can't because the medicine of the future is so advanced that everyone's basically immortal. And after another botched attempt to try and kill himself, or themselves rather, because we don't know the gender specifically, they are captured by evil scientists and forced to be made immortal. And even after that, they still want to try and take their own life. So, yeah, kind of a touchy one, but also weirdly fascinating. I've never really seen a concept like this done, you know, and I do want to see what the band could have done if they wrote it more as a full story on purpose. That aside, though, I also quite like a lot of the other elements of the album. I think the instrumentation is quite good. I love the guitar work, especially. I think the pacing is really good too. I do wish it focused to try and tell more of the actual story going on, because the band did admittedly play a bit loose with it, but I think they will be the first guys to admit that they did. Especially considering that their previous albums have been much more conceptualized than this one, but I do like what they were trying to do. I do find it weird that the last song on an 8-song album is just an instrumental track for about 5.5 minutes, but what can you do? I do think the production was really good and clean, though, and I like the performances as well. The band really came off as really good storytellers, and yeah, really enjoyed a lot of this, and I would recommend you go give it a listen. Although, again, the warning for the whole lyrics thing, if you did skip it, maybe don't listen to it if you're sensitive to any of that stuff. If you did watch that bit. And finally, something a little bit happier, an Australian band named The Decline, not to be confused with a French band of the same name, mostly because that version had an exclamation mark at the end. This is an Australian band, though, with their newest album, got there eventually, Magical Misery Tour. And I'm giving this one straight up a B+. It's just very good skate punk. I think the only purely punk leaning album I've covered in this entire video. Really enjoyed it, though. It did feel I did compare it in my mind, right, to the new Frenzal Rhomb album. I have no clue if I'm saying that band's name correctly, although this band is admittedly inspired by Frenzal Rhomb, so it works. But yeah, this album has a lot of songs. Most of them are there's 17 songs, but a lot of them are over quite quick. But they do get their point across really fast. The band just have a natural charm as well. And I love it when bands from their home countries actually speak in their native accent. And being Australian, these guys do just that, you know, sort of like the same effects that Dune Rats have on me, or Frenzal Rhomb, they did it as well. Yeah, really good stuff from that standpoint. The songwriting is just mostly about the misery and depression and boredom that they experienced during the pandemic, because a lot of the songs were written in 2020. You know, and I don't think they were able to put them together because that was 2020, even though they live in Australia, where the laws were solved a little bit quicker over there, and like there was something going on over there, but they managed to sort their shit out a lot faster than most of the rest of the world, and in New Zealand too. Yeah, even despite that, they still wrote. You know, it was still a miserable time, but they do try and make some fun out of it. I think the performances are quite charming too. Instrumentally, really good. I love how fast the riffs feel. I've already sort of covered the structure, but even though there's a lot of songs, they don't feel super sped through, and they've actually got a really good flow to them. And I do respect that they don't try and waste people's time. And production-wise, again, really clean. I like a lot of the layering of the sound. I do appreciate some of the layering choices in terms of vocals, especially. Yeah, really nicely handled from all fronts, and I definitely recommend you give it a listen. It's just a bit of fun, a bit of Aussie punk fun, and you can never go wrong with that. And that'll about do it. I'll do my official ranking system as soon as I scroll up a little bit to see all the albums. There we go. So Code 7 with Go Let It In, Burner with It All Returns to Nothing. I would say The Decline with Magical Misery Tour, then Acid Throne with Kings of Death, although I could easily interchange those two. Crystal Coffin with The Curse of Immortality, and Anger Over Cycles of Pain. But as always, go and listen to all of these yourself and go, judge them on your own opinion. And also my favourite album cover goes to Magical Misery Tour by The Decline because it's just fantastic. It's Eeyore on a roller coaster ride. I like a good hand-drawn one, and I feel like this one was. And I like the fact that the band's name is just made up of stars for some reason. It's just a cover that brings me such joy when I look at it, It's really good stuff. That'll about do it though. Tomorrow I'll be doing a reaction to the new While She Sleeps single, so gonna be looking forward to doing that. And then tomorrow night I will be streaming Deck the Brawls. Or I could be doing that on Saturday depending on when Graves gets those logos finished, but I do have a failsafe in place just in case. So either way, it's either going to be tomorrow night or Saturday night, but you will be getting Deck the Brawls, and I'll see you all. For that stuff. As always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye bye.